Hello and welcome to the 710 KNUS Rescue Colorado Rally. Thank you all for being here. Ballots are dropping, only about 20 days left, and we're going to see this across the finish line. But before we do, we have a couple of things that we want to make sure that we always do at the very beginning, and that's why I'm so honored to be here with Steffan Tubbs and George Brauchler. Let's give it over to Steffan Tubbs here.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome, and welcome. You are our studio audience. Say hello to everyone that has just clicked on streaming live for free online. Make them feel very jealous that they're not with us, but they are in spirit, and welcome to those of you online at 710knus.com. I'll hand it over to George in a moment, but please, even though you veterans do not like when a guy like me makes you do this or requests it, if you have served or you are currently serving in the great United States military, will you please stand if able so we can all recognize you? Studio audience, we can do better than that. Let's go. Thank you.
Hi, I'm George Brauchler. I do some of the morning stuff most of the days. Thanks for coming here. I want to follow up on something Steffan just did because I'm a veteran too. I'm an Army guy. And so yes, that's what I'm talking about. I like to see who we have here and from where. Who do we have here from the Air Force? Let's see it. Air Force. Right there. Thank you. Thank you. That is just like the military. Thank you so much. That's a kid. That's a shot. Of course, inter-service rivalry. Navy? Do we have Navy out there? Right on. We've got some Navy guys that are going to be up on this stage running for office. How about Marines? Okay, well, that counts. Your father counts. That's it. It's in your DNA. You've got it. And then I haven't left a Coast Guard, Merchant Marine. Anybody? Oh, right on. I love that. And then let's be real, big daddy of them all, the Army. Let's give it up for the Army. Woo! Whoop, whoop, whoop. That's what I'm talking about. Oh, and Space Force.
Oh, you missed it.
Hey, listen, we're here to celebrate this great experiment in freedom and self-determination and self-governance. And while we're talking about it at the state level and the national ramifications, what separates us from those people on the other side of the ideological spectrum is we know who we owe it to, and we know how to acknowledge it. So we can't even begin this show until we stand to our feet, remove our hats, and do the national anthem. Let's do that.
Ladies and gentlemen, would you please rise and remain standing for the singing of our national anthem? America is needing leadership like never before. The coming election will be the deciding factor. Will America heal itself and get back onto the path of greatness? Or will America continue to go down this path of division, allowing craziness to prevail? It's never been more important for you to get out and vote. The stakes have never been higher. The candidates who want to fight for American greatness have put their names on the line. Will you help send them over the finish line? Will you celebrate this victory? The decision is all up to you. That's why you're here. That's our daunting task. Welcome to the Battleground Talkers Tour 2022.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Hugh Hewitt. I am so glad to be back in Colorado. I want to thank our live audience, our studio audience, the people watching at home, and the people who are going to write checks tonight to all of these candidates because they need your help to get over the line. I want to read to you, I'm playing hurt tonight, by the way. I came directly here from watching the Yankees, which ought to be an illegal monopoly in the United States. But the Yankees beat my Cleveland Guardians tonight. So we go home, but I wore my Cleveland Browns tie just to show you folks, I do not care how often you show the drive and the fumble at Mile High Stadium, we're gonna get you eventually. Ben Domenech, who I enjoy sharing the panel with on Special Report on Bret Baier's show, tweeted out 1 hour ago, I meant what I said tonight with Bret Baier. I think Republicans could win 40 House seats. Mitch could end up with a 3-seat majority. This thing is breaking against the Democrats in a devastating way that could sweep out every Gen X leadership figure they had. Now, I think from Ben's lips to your legs, because you got to walk some precincts and you got to write some checks, you have a terrific top of the ticket in Heidi and Joe. I just met Heidi for the first time, and Joe has been coming on the show since before the Democrats tried to nominate somebody else. Joe is, I think it's fair to say, probably the person who has been on my radio show. And I'm on early, so you don't hear me, but unless you're crazy up early. But Joe has been on my radio show more than any other candidate this year because usually I pick them. I pick them well. I pick someone who comes out of left field like Mike Braun did 4 years ago. I pick people like Tom Cotton, who came on when nobody knew he was running for the House and thought it was crazy he was running for the Senate. But I can smell a great candidate a mile away. I've been doing this so long. I had white hair when I started, when I came out here originally in 2002 for Bill Owen and the first 96-hour project. So I've been doing this for so long, I have a second sense about Senate and federal candidates. Governor candidates, I think Heidi's got amazing spark and sparkle, so I think she's got a great thing going. But when a wave begins to build, and I mentioned in the reception earlier tonight, I've been doing this so long. I was in law school in 1980, the first wave, the Ronald Reagan wave. And I sat there, my dad had given me a bottle of 30-year-old scotch for final exam week when it was done, and it didn't make it through the election of 1980. Because we elected Ronald Reagan and took the United States Senate, and Jimmy Carter was gobsmacked, and the entire national media was gobsmacked. Nobody saw it, because it broke our way in the last 3 weeks. Polls were lagging indicators. In 1994, I was live on television in LA and said if it was a fight, they'd stop it. Chris Cox came in, then a congressman, now in private practice on the UFC board. If anybody told you they saw this coming, they're lying. And then, of course, we had a wonderful, wonderful year in 2010 when the Republicans won 63 House seats. I don't think we can win 63 because we actually had a red wave beneath the presidential election in 2020. We picked up a lot of seats, but with redistricting, we have the ability to go to the largest number of Republicans in the House that we have had since the Great Depression. When that happens, much will change because the president, infirm though he might be, will not be gone for 2 more years after that. But much can happen because they will have a resolute spine. In the Senate, we can, with the election of Joe and 2 others, go to 53 and hold back, even if we lose 1 or 2, hold back the worst of the Biden judges. And the Biden judges are pretty bad. The Biden judges are really, really bad. But the good news is President Trump gave us a Supreme Court that makes only good decisions. Finally, they got rid of Dobbs. I am proud that you are proud that Dobbs has been ruled the law of the land, and that after 49 years, and many of you are as old as I am, and you can remember being gobsmacked in 1973 when the court went out of its way to legislate After 49 years of relentless pursuit of the constitutional adjudication, that issue belongs with the states. And whatever the states decide is what ought to be the constitutional law of the United States. I'm very pleased with what President Trump did, but it's just getting started. We need property rights to come back, and they're going to come back. We need First Amendment rights to be protected, they're going to be protected. We need Colorado to stop persecuting people like 303 Creative and Masterpiece Cake Shop. We need religious liberty and First Amendment rights all across the United States. Now, what that means between now and 20 days. You know, I do not like elections which are spread out. I want to do it like Israel. You have to go home to vote, and you got to do it in one day within 8 hours. That's not what we do, so we got to work with the rules that we've been given. And Colorado's got a great state party. You've got a terrific organization operating at many levels, and you have many great congressional candidates. All they need is to stay in the hunt. I went to lunch today at Montana Ted's. Why? Because I like their chicken Caesar salad, and I always have. And I was sitting looking at a TV. Michelle Austin, my friend, took me up in my Sherpa for 20 years in Colorado. Back to back to back to back to back to back to back television ads for every race. I don't know that you can see anything except a television ad for one race or the other. It's all now noise. All that matters is you. Social media matters. Your willingness to go out and tell your neighbors and your friends and your family, and to do whatever you can to get as many people as you can to vote early, early, early. A lot of people in the generation before us wanted to wait until Election Day. They like that. I voted today, sicker. Nope, we got to run up the early vote. So as soon as you get that ballot, mark it for Heidi, mark it for Joe, every Republican on that ballot, all the way down the ballot. Because if I wake up on Monday morning, and I'll be going late, I don't know if I'll be late enough to get the Colorado result, but I'll be going late. If Joe has won the Senate, we will have a 52 or 53 seat margin. If he wins it barely, it'll be 51, because then something will have happened between now and then. But the tides, they are with us. All right, so the tides were not with the Guardians today. The tides are with us. And do not believe a single poll. I leave you with one thing. I'm a Washington Post columnist, don't boo. I like to tell you about one thing the Washington Post did in the year 2020. They published a poll 5 days before the election with ABC News. 5 days before the election on the state of Wisconsin. They said that Joe Biden was ahead in Wisconsin by 17 points. The Washington Post, ABC. Joe Biden won by 0.6 points. You cannot believe one poll. What is going on in the United States is fundamental. It is an ocean-like poll. It is a wave. It is building. It is building because of 5 issues, and you know them: inflation, crime, the border, education, and China. And I want to close by talking about education because no one else will in the rest of the night. Make sure you vote against every incumbent on every school board that is up on your ballot. Most school boards aren't up this time, but if you get one, do not vote ever again for anyone who shut down the schools and refuses to admit a mistake. We can never do it again. Lowest ACTs in 30 years because of what we did. We did not learn from our mistakes. You have a great governor in Heidi, a great senator in Joe. I'll be back later to talk to Ken Buck. Now a little bit of video break. Thank you for having me back, Colorado.
Jared Polis likes to think he has done a good job, but here around the Colorado kitchen table, families are struggling to make the most basic ends meet. We can do better. The past few years have been really hard, and it's time to begin charting a new path forward for everyone.
Jeff, how are you, buddy?
I'm a mom, a business owner, a leader. This November, let's choose to build a Colorado we can all be proud of.
I'm Heidi Ganahl, running for governor of Colorado, and I approve this message.
Well, how's your search going?
Yeah, it's going okay. It's going okay. They hired Carter Baldwin. They're going to do a national search and all that stuff. So
I have this thing on. There it goes right there. Yeah. Hi. My guess is that you know the two folks here to my left. Really one of them has been at the national level, all over the news, doing great things, not just on behalf of a state that rhymes with Iowa, but also for the country. But I got to tell you, my favorite thing about Senator Joni Ernst is that she is also an Army person. That's right. Lieutenant Colonel in the Army Guard, deployed to Iraq. She went when it was real, folks. Not that it wasn't when I was there, but 2003, 2004 is Wild West time. And that's who a U.S. Senator from Iowa is. And she is here to help get across that goal line. Our next U.S. Senator for the state of Colorado, Joe O'Dea, right here. Woo! Woo! It's not that nothing isn't going on in Iowa and back in a place that we affectionately call the swamp, but Senator Ernst, why are you here stumping for Joe?
Well, folks, it is such an important election season, and I know you hear it every year. This is the most important election of our lifetime. But folks, take a look around. We have Democratic control of Congress, both chambers. We have a Democrat in the White House, and it's 50-50 in the Senate, folks. Joe O'Dea is going to put the gavels back in Republicans' hands. That's what we got to do. So Joe will talk all night and day about what's going on here in Colorado. It's the same thing in Iowa. You know, it's going to be the crime, the fentanyl, open border, inflation, all of that. It's impacting everyone across the United States. It's time to change course.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Now, listen, it used to be that we would ask questions of each other like, is your life better today than it was 4 years ago? The way things have been trending, I feel like asking the question, is your life better than it was yesterday? Between inflation and the crime rate, I am looking forward to the day, Joe O'Dea, when the Democrats run against you for your reelection and they say things like, Joe O'Dea was the deciding vote in border security. Joe O'Dea was the deciding vote in getting back energy independence so we didn't have to go groveling to the Saudis and figure out how to solar heat our homes. Joe, tell us about this.
George, just keep going, man. You're doing great. In fact, I'm taking notes right now. Those are really good. I think the most disturbing thing that we can think about right now is the fact that Joe Biden's in charge. And if he's not in charge, the second in command that's breaking the ties for you guys right now is Kamala Harris. I mean, that keeps me up at night. I'm telling you right now, I'm going to the U.S. Senate so we can get the gavels back on our side. We can start to dictate the policies that are going to move America forward. We're going to free up our energy. Colorado needs its energy back. We're going to get this economy back under control. All we got to do is quit spending. We don't have a taxation problem. We have a spending problem.
Amen
it's
to that.
very simple. And we're going to start backing our police.
Oh, yeah. Amen
Oh,
to
my
that.
God. We got to get behind the blue. Bennett had a great opportunity during the mostly peaceful protests, y'all remember them, right, where they tore our communities apart, to stand up to his party, and he didn't do it. He votes with Joe Biden 98% of the time. He's a rubber stamp for his party, and we are there. Our economy is in shambles, groceries at an all-time high, gas on its way back up again, and remember, diesel never came down. It's still $5. It's going to be $5 for a while, and until we can get our energy policy back on track, we're not going to get ahead of this inflation. So I'm looking forward to go there and turning this thing on its ear. Thank you guys for your support. I appreciate you being here tonight.
Awesome, awesome. If I could, one memory that I don't think we hear about from the mainstream media, shocker, I don't know if you knew that, they're not that fair, is that if you'll remember, May 7th, 2019, 2 disgruntled students walked into classroom 107 out here at STEM, not far from where we sit right now, and tried to murder 27 people. And in the aftermath of that horrible tragedy, as the community was trying to come together to deal with this, the students themselves, do you remember what Senator Bennett and Congressman Crowe did? They went to that event and tried to turn it into politics about guns, and they were booed by our kids right out of the building. But those are the people, that's right. Senator Ernst, you represent 1% of the United States Senate. I just wanted to say that. No, I'm kidding. It's easy to think
That's
about.
accurate.
It is, thank you. It's easy to think about the Senate in terms of all the things we know, that they take the big votes, they're the best looking people, all that stuff. But tell us about why the other things are important. Why is it important that the Republicans get back the majority? Not just for breaking ties and votes, but what are those other most important things you can see on the horizon?
You have outlined them already. So if we look at the economic policy of the United States right now, and what the Democrats are doing, even against the advice of some of these former top economic advisors that are Democrats, they continue to spend money that we don't have. So just as Joe said, we have a spending problem, and we have seen trillions of dollars spent singularly by the Democrats, no Republican support. And so we don't get that buy-in. We don't have a say. And we are running our country into the ground with debt. So we have got to straighten this out. It puts everybody at risk. We have got to, you and I know this, we've got to focus on strengthening our military.
Oh, amen to that.
You know, our federal government's number one obligation and why it was formed in the first place was so that we could defend our own people. And that meant a strong military, national defense. And yet, I've been talking about this today as we sat down to go through the National Defense Authorization Act in our Armed Services Committee in the United States Senate. You know what one of the top priorities for Joe Biden was? To transition our non-tactical vehicle fleet to all electric.
Yeah, it's happening. That's real. Yeah, that's real.
Electric vehicles, not making our military the most lethal fighting force on the face of the planet,
Amen.
Which is what we should be focusing on. Instead, it's been about wokeism. It's been about let's go to electric and support the Chinese in their battery production. So there's a lot of things that we really need to start focusing on. We need to get back to the basics. We need to focus on our people, not these fantastical ideas that revolve around these climate agenda ideas. We just really have to do what's right for these hardworking Americans, and that's what we need to do. It's why we need Joe O'Dea.
Amen to that. Joe, if I could, as the former prosecutor, the former district attorney out here in the greatest county in the state, and for those of you that come from an adjoining county, it's okay. You can move here. It's all right. It's awesome. You know that one of the things that has really crept up on us in a pretty vigorous, violent way is fentanyl. And it is something that when I took over this office back in 2013, it was something that people mentioned, but now it's something that's killing over 1,500, 1,800 Coloradans a year. It's everywhere. I look at that a little bit like a local crime, but I say to myself, if we just had the right people in place at Congress, what could we do to stop the senseless death?
Well, it's a deeply personal thing for Celeste and I. Our best friends lost a 25-year-old daughter here 2 years ago to fentanyl overdose. And so it struck home. We saw what it did to their family. It ripped them apart. They'll never recover. She was a gorgeous, gorgeous kid. But this starts with leadership. We got a border that's leaking like a sieve right now, and it's being run by the cartel. The cartel's in charge down there. Don't think for a moment that they're not. Human trafficking. When I spent a half day with Chief Payson, Denver Police Department, and he tells me, he says he's doing everything he can do here in town to help, round these guys up, but he's got to have help at the border. We've got to choke down the supply. Same thing that Sheriff Schrader said in Jefferson County. We've got to choke the supply. We have to do better at the border. One of the very first bills that I hope that Senator Ernst will help me run when I get to the Senate here in January will be to secure that border. Amen. We've got to get that taken care of.
Put me on as a co-sponsor.
Whew. What I'd really like to do is go ahead and tap that Inflation Reduction Act that they lied to us about, and let's get rid of 87,000 IRS agents that are going to shake down working Americans here in Colorado. use that money to bolster the Border Patrol, and let's take whatever cash is left over, let's put that with our local police department, our local sheriffs, and let's bolster their pay so we can get these crime numbers down under control. It's pretty simple.
Amen. Amen. You know, that's right. If we, I like where your head is, sir, because if we audited everybody that illegally crossed the border, they'd stop coming, right? If you've ever had an audit, I like where your head is. This is exactly what we do with them. We're not moving them around the country. We're subjecting them to an audit. That is genius. Listen, one last thing before I let you go. I see the hook right out here. If you ever see this gentleman come out here, it's to say, George, you've talked too long. One big thing, you can invent a whole bunch of reasons to just vote your ballot and to say, I've done enough. But for this election, for this time, the only way we all wake up on that Wednesday morning with big old smiles on our faces and see the gnashing of teeth and the crying of tears on some of those big Denver TV stations out there, that's if you get everyone in your neighborhood, everyone in your social media circle, the folks you've never met before that you see in the supermarket, and say, make sure you vote, and make sure you vote to rescue Colorado. Vote Joe O'Dea for United States Senate.
George, thanks so much.
Thank you so
thank you.
much.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thank you.
Colorado.
Senator Joni
Thank
Ernst,
you.
Joe O'Dea.
God bless you.
Thank you, Colorado. Let's go get it done.
Liberals in Washington, D.C. think spending your money is hard work. They spent trillions, caused record inflation, broke our economy. But Washington Democrats want to keep spending and raise your taxes to do it.
And my opponent, Yadira Caraveo, she's with them. I'm Barb Kirkmeyer, and it's time to stop the digging. I've done it before. I fought the big spenders, I balanced the county budget, zeroed out the debt. I'm Barb Kirkmeyer. I approve this message.
She is going to be a great addition to my colleague sitting here on the left. Ken Buck and I have been friends going back to, I don't know how many years I've been interviewing you, Ken. And it doesn't matter because you get better every single time. Good to be with you again tonight.
Thank you.
Ben Domenech says 40 seats in the House. What do you think?
I think 30, but I think the key is that we will win the House and Nancy Pelosi will retire. That's the key.
You are on Judiciary. You should be leading the subcommittee on antitrust when we're done. Tell me what your objectives are for a Republican Congress.
Yeah, it's real simple. When you create a digital file with Google, you own it, not Google. And you want to move that to Bing or anybody else, you move that to Bing. When Facebook is stalking you, that's stalking. It's not right. So what we need to do is we need to make sure we have 5 Googles and 7 Facebooks and 10 Amazons that are competing with each other. Just like we have an MSNBC and we have a Fox News and a Newsmax, we need competition in the marketplace so that consumers are in power.
So I was just talking with Eric Adlin backstage. He'll be out in a little bit. Eric's going to win. You're all going to win. I just think it's going to be a great year. And, of course, he's an Army vet, West Point vet. Army did not make their recruitment goals. Can you tell me why you think that is? Because I know you're around a lot of veterans up there, whether it's Gallagher or Waltz. My son works for Mike Waltz. Tell us what's going on in the military.
Yeah, I got to tell you something. The military and the Biden administration have been telling us for 2 years that we are a racist country. They've been telling veterans that if you don't take the shot, you are going to get kicked out of the military. They've been telling us that the rule of law really doesn't matter because we're going to leave the border open. They've been telling us all kinds of things. My favorite of all time is that men can have babies. I have to tell you, when you tell people that long enough, they may not want to fight for this country. It's going to take a Donald Trump. It's going to take a Ron DeSantis. It's going to take someone to make sure that we instill pride in this country and move forward.
So, Speaker McCarthy and Majority Leader Scalise, what can you guys actually do with them in charge that we're not seeing now? What could you actually force Joe Biden to do?
So the critical thing to do when you have a Democrat in the White House and you have Republicans in the House in the majority is oversight. You remember Fast and Furious. You remember Lois Lerner. That was all Darrell Issa on the Oversight and Government Reform Committee. We're going to have, in fact, Mayorkas is going to have his private parking space at the Capitol because he's going to be testifying so many times in so many committees that we're going to keep him busy. But oversight is the key, and the oversight with the eye towards 2024 and how Republicans are different than Democrats.
So, Ken Buck, I've lobbied Leader McCarthy personally for 2 select committees. One he's going to do on China, and it's going to be a select committee that's going to be on China, and I hope it becomes a standing committee. The other is I would like a 90-day committee on the last 90 days of Afghanistan. I don't think it takes a long time, but no one has resigned. No one has said my bad. What do you think happened there? It's been a year. There are a lot of military people here. There are a lot of military parents like I am here. What happened in Afghanistan, and do you think the Congress can get to the bottom of it?
Yeah, I think that it's a very simple bottom, frankly. Joe Biden made an absolutely arbitrary decision, and he followed his non-veteran advisors in the White House, and he told General Milley, you can have 2,500 troops, period, end of story. And that was enough not to do the job. And General Milley told him, we can't get the job done with that force. President Trump never would have done that. President Trump would have drawn a line, and he would have told the Taliban, you cross this line, we're coming back in. And they would have believed him. And they would never have, we've never had the chaos that we had in the withdrawal.
Do you think it's appropriate to have a select committee to look into it? Because I would like to see every single person on the chain of command testify as to what their instructions to the president were. Because I do believe it's all on Joe Biden. I don't think anybody else was involved.
Well, obviously, he's the man at the top. He is the commander-in-chief. Whether he made the decision or followed the decision, he's the one that needs to be held responsible. The problem with select committees is the Armed Services Committee has jurisdiction. I think a select committee is absolutely appropriate when you're talking about multi-jurisdictional issues. I would give the Armed Services Committee the first shot at something like this. If they're too busy to do it, then absolutely form a select committee, because the media focuses on select committees.
This is it. You get this. 90 days for 90 days is just a gimmick. It's a gimmick to get, I'd load it up with veterans, and I'd start drilling down on these people. Let me move to what you hear from your colleagues. You've been through waves before. Waves for us, waves against us. Do you think it feels like a wave?
It does not feel like as much of a wave as 2010, 2014. I was a beneficiary of 2014, as was Cory Gardner in the Senate race here. Cory was a beneficiary in 2010 in that wave. He defeated Betsy Markey. I think that we have to, as Republicans, prove that we're going to govern as conservatives. If we prove that, I think you'll see more of a wave in 24. But I just don't know that people believe that we're actually going to cut the budget and we're going to do the things that we say we're going to do. That's
our debt is $31 trillion. When H.W. left office, I believe it was $7 trillion. When W. left office, I believe it was $18 trillion. President Obama added 10, and Joe's added a lot. I mean, what are we going to do? $31 trillion. The debt is going to crush us.
It is crushing us. It's part of why we have inflation. It's part of why we have these other issues. Absolutely, the debt is huge, and we need a Republican that has the backbone to say, I'm sorry, but we're going to gore every ox. We're not going to just gore a few.
Okay, I'm getting a signal that Dennis has said goodbye to us. Is that it? Oh, Dennis is coming back, or he's not? Later. I want you to all know Dennis Prager didn't show up on time. All right, I want you to note that. Call his show for me tomorrow and say, why did you stiff us? You didn't show up, and it's because he's having a cigar. So Ken, we get to go, I just tell it like it is. We get to go a little bit longer. Run down for me, if you will, who's going to be our leadership positions on the committees? Who's going to be running these committees?
Well, on Judiciary Committee, Jim Jordan is going to be the chair. Yeah, we have the lineup basically of ranking members taking over. One of the ranking members lost a race in Chicago, so he will not be, but they will go through that process. The real battle is going to be Ways and Means, which is a major, this is the tax writing and for our purposes, the tax cutting committee. And so there will be a battle in
Who
ways
will
of-
be the chair of Energy and Commerce? Because we have to start producing oil and gas in the United States again.
Right.
We have to
right.
do it.
Yeah. Kathy McMorris Rogers will be the chair of Energy and Commerce, and she is a strong advocate for fossil fuels. She's a strong advocate, as I think most of us are, for all of the above.
Okay.
If fossil fuels is part of that, great, but it's got to compete in the marketplace. Right now, the others can't compete against natural gas.
I want to go then a little bit deeper, if we can, into the antitrust stuff, because I get all excited about what I understand to be the abusive marketplace power of a few companies. I am most concerned with Facebook and Google. I'm most concerned with Facebook and Google for the reason that you reference is that they take our information, they don't pay for it, and they use it. How can you stop that?
Well, let me go just one step further, if I can, Hugh.
Please.
Ronna McDaniel sent out a memo and said that she was going to be suing Google. And as a result of that, there have been other information has come forward. In 12 Senate races, the 12 U.S. Senate races that are the most contested, you can't find on Google 7 of the campaign websites for Republicans. And this is what Ronna McDaniel was saying, that when a Republican sends out an email at the end of a quarter, which is a critical time to show strength, over 90% of those emails go to spam. Not true with the Democrats. Less than 20% of the Democrat emails go to spam. There is clear discrimination based on viewpoint with these companies. So not only are they creepy and following us all around, you get constant reminders when you're doing something after you've searched for something, but they are discriminating against us in a way, and when you control information in a democracy, you control elections. And that's what we can't allow to happen, and that's why it's so important for conservatives to stand up.
All right, I think we're getting the signal to wrap up. Everybody, please thank Ken Buck, and go Ken. Lead when you get back there, my friend. Thank you.
So after someone commits a third or fourth car theft in, say, 3 months, they should be kept in with a really high bond, because you got a sense they're going to get out, they're going to commit more crimes.
This is the idiot that's in charge of crime?
In the next 4 years, you can count on me being the same type of attorney general I've been.
This is exactly why Phil Weiser and Jared Polis need to go.
Let's vote Republican.
Hear, hear. So who is ready to take back the U.S. House of Representatives? Well, these folks right here are going to help us do it. And just a couple of good news. And by the way, isn't it nice to have a lot of good news as we're heading into the election this time around? The most recent generic congressional poll said that right now Republicans are up 7%. Considering the way they're tilted, that's probably about 10 to 15%, I would gather. So we have an amazing shot. We have here with us Eric Odland. He's the candidate for CD7. Barb Kirkmeyer, candidate for CD8. And Steve Monahan, he is the candidate for CD6, all ready to take back and take the gavel out of Nancy Pelosi's hands.
We're going to do it.
Yes, indeed. Well, I want to get right to it. So we have a couple of combat veterans here, and I really appreciate it. We have our very own Top Gun, Stephen Monahan. You may have seen his ads. And Eric Odland, who is also a combat veteran, decorated Bronze Star. We appreciate your service, both of you gentlemen. My question is this: our current commander-in-chief is creating a very unsafe environment, a very demoralized military. What would both of you do as you enter into the Congress coming up to turn that around for our military?
You want me to begin?
Go for it, yes.
Well, I mean, first of all, we have to start by holding the Biden administration accountable. We've seen the unprecedented erosion of American strength. We've got a national security disaster on our southern border. Bad actors are exploiting it as we speak, but let's not forget the disaster in Afghanistan where I served. This has emboldened Russian aggression. It's emboldened our enemies around the globe. China's rattling its sabers at Taiwan. North Korea is now conducting missile tests. The day Biden took office, Hamas starts launching rockets into Israel, and we see the Middle East destabilizing. So Congress has to take immediate steps to hold this administration accountable and make sure that our military and American strength is poised to maintain our primacy on the globe. Because if we don't do that, China will take advantage, and they are the most significant threat as a nation state to the United States. So we got to do a lot of work, but it starts with holding Biden accountable.
Hear, hear. How about you, Stephen?
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Eric. Well, I'd say barring finding a time machine and going back and getting rid of Joe Biden, I think what we need to do, we need to find a diplomatic off-ramp right now for Ukraine. Going to war with the most heavily armed nuclear power on the planet is not a good idea. Joe Biden is not a wartime president. I don't think anybody in here believes that. I don't think we want to test that anytime soon. What we need to do, some of which, I'm 20 years and counting in the United States military and the Navy. This is the lowest I have ever seen morale. I joined right after 9/11, morale was sky high. Right now, rock bottom. People are in places like Italy, wishing they were anywhere else but in the United States military. When you have a commander-in-chief like that, they lose the respect, they're going to lose the military. We need someone new desperately, but barring that, we need a Congress that comes in and says, morale, esprit de corps, combat effectiveness is the most important thing, and they act like it with legislation. No more of this social justice warrior agenda in our U.S. military.
There you go. So does that mean you all are not for what the Air Force Academy just said, that you're not allowed to call people mom and dad? I would hope not. So
there is no place for wokeness in our military whatsoever.
Yes, exactly. We need them to focus on macroaggressions like our enemies, not microaggressions. So Barb, another national security issue is actually energy. We are now energy dependent on our enemies. You are in Weld County, you're a Weld County Commissioner, state senator. What would you do, or what will you do, I should say, in the Congress to help us become energy independent and net energy exporters once again?
Well, thank you for the question. And I was a little concerned because I was a dairy farmer and grew up on a dairy farm. So I was like, what kind of question are you going to ask me? I wasn't in the military. But we need to unleash energy here in the United States, and particularly here in Colorado. District 8 sits right on top of the 5th most producing oil and gas field in the nation. My opponent thought it was a great idea to run Senate Bill, she was the prime sponsor on Senate Bill 181, that basically killed the oil and gas industry here in the state and killed thousands of jobs. She's with Joe Biden. That's exactly what he did. When he took office, he cut leases on federal lands, he stopped the Keystone Pipeline, he did everything he could to make us dependent upon places like OPEC, Russia, and China. So we need to open up and unleash our American energy, our domestic energy, and that's part of our commitment to America that we are going to do. We're going to start on, the three of us, on day one when we take office in January.
I like the sound of that. Thank you. I think one of the reasons a more recent poll showed that in September, independent women favored Democrats by 14 points. 1 month later, they favor Republicans by 18 points. Now, that is a huge shift. One of the reasons why I think is how radical the Democrats have really become. And we can say that about all of your opponents. Let's start with your two opponents, Barb and Eric, because they actually joined together in the most radical state legislature we've ever had here in Colorado to back the fentanyl decriminalization, moving it down from a felony, as well as the other radical policies such as abortion up until after the moment of birth. Talk about that with your opponents, and what are you finding in the campaign trail? Is that finally catching up with them?
Well, I would say yes, and you can see our attack ad on Brittany Pedersen. I mean, she was a prime sponsor of this bill that reduced fentanyl, distribution of fentanyl from a felony to a misdemeanor. Now Colorado is in the top 5 of states in the nation for fentanyl overdose deaths. We're well over 1,000 this year. It is an epidemic. It's Chinese fentanyl streaming across the southern border. But these policies contribute to overall crime. And we have a crime wave here in Colorado that can be held, and we can hold the legislature, including our opponents and the governor, accountable for this crime wave. Number 1 in the nation for auto theft. Number 1 in the nation for bank robberies. We're the cocaine capital of the country. This is unprecedented in our majestic state, and it should not be occurring. We've got to restore rule of law here in Colorado. We've got to do it at the level of Congress, all the way up to the federal government, set the right example, because it is unprecedented lawlessness that is just contributing to this crime wave. But there's no reason that fentanyl should be the leading cause of death from 18 to 45 years old in this country. We've got to secure the southern border and enforce the law.
Absolutely agree with what Eric just said. I've been down to the southern border, went with Congressman Tony Gonzalez to see it, talked to the Border Patrol. They are absolutely feeling like they have been abandoned by this administration. Close to 11,000 pounds of fentanyl, pure fentanyl, they seized at the border. 5 million pills, those little blue pills, and now they're making it in rainbow colors because they're trying to go after our kids. And it's exactly what they're doing. We get here to Colorado, and Eric's correct. Fentanyl's streaming across that border. We get here to Colorado, our opponents, they basically legalized fentanyl. They had the opportunity to fix it this year. They did not. They disregarded what law enforcement said to them. They said, no possession, because possession and distribution are the same. And what do our opponents do? Eric's opponent carried the bill that still allows for, essentially, in my mind, legalizing fentanyl. What did both of our opponents do? They sent a letter last year to Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi and said, defund ICE and defund the Border Patrol. Is that crazy? That's who we're running against. These ladies are crazy. They're allowing, they are. In my mind, they are. Okay, I have 6 grandsons. They use the crazy word all the time. But, so they're allowing, they never talk about securing the border. In fact, my opponent has a hard time showing up to anything. She hasn't shown up to several of our forums. I don't think yours has either.
Same problem.
We're starting to call her no-show Caraveo because she just doesn't show up. But she showed up long enough to write a letter to Joe Biden and say, defund the Border Patrol. That's right up there when she talked about defunding the police, and they passed a bill in 2019 to attempt to do that. And then they tried to cover it up this year by saying, oh, no, we're really in support of law enforcement. No, they're not. They've caused this problem, they perpetuate the problem, and they're doing nothing to try and stop it.
There you go. Thank you. And that's something that all of us can do. Any one of these amazing candidates who's running against someone who is in the state legislature, let's make them own their record, not the doublespeak they're trying to give right now. Speaking of radical records, Jason Crowe, who is a veteran, it is astonishing to me, voted 100% of the time with Joe Biden. Are you hanging that around his neck, and is that catching up with him in this race?
Yeah, well, we are trying to, and I'll tell you, at the door, that definitely plays. Nobody wants a partisan hack, and that guy is nothing. He masqueraded as someone that would push back against Nancy Pelosi and her radical agenda. He also has a 100% voting record with her. And so if you have a problem with Joe, you have a problem with Crowe. And I just...
that should be a bumper sticker,
I pulled that.
Right? I like it.
That was by accident. And I'll tell you, and that does play at the door. And I'll just piggyback just a little bit on that. He also will refuse to debate. And they aren't doing anything. And that is because they have nothing to stand on except radical record. And so once they've already said abortion 10,000 times, they can't say anything else. So they just won't show up.
Right. Agreed. And as most of you have seen now, that has dropped, the abortion issue, probably down to number 6 amongst voters, and it is not sticking by any means, which we're seeing with independent women. So we just have about a minute left. I want to make sure that you have an opportunity to share with this wonderful crowd and our viewing audience a final word, what you need in the home stretch and how they can help you out.
We need every one of you. This is a call to action, folks. We want a red wave in Colorado. We got to seize the day and give every ounce of our effort in the next 3 weeks. Republicans cannot sit on their couch and expect us to win this election. We've got to turn out independent voters. Every race, all 3 of our races are going to be extremely tight. Bobert won District 7 by 122 votes. That means that every voter contact you make, every conversation you have, every door you knock, makes a difference. So don't just expect us to go win this alone. We're going to do it on your backs. We need your money, we need your time, and we need your talent, and you got to help us fight, because we're fighting like hell, and we're going to win these races, but we need you to help us do it. Thank you.
Thank you. And by the way, a great point is that $750 Tabor refund you got, which was not from Jared Polis. Donate it to one of these great candidates. And now quickly we'll go ahead with Barb and also Stephen.
Sure. I'm just going to add on and say this. 21 days. We have 21 more days to kick Nancy Pelosi out of her job and rein in Joe Biden. And we're the ones who are willing to go fight for it, but we do need your help. We need you to talk to your neighbors. We need to talk to your family. We need you to just go get 9 other people to go vote. Just go talk to them. We need your help. We're out walking every day, every weekend. If you want something to do on Saturday and Sundays, come on up to District 8, 7 or 6. Man, we're all out walking. You can help us out. But go talk to your neighbors. Don't think that it doesn't matter, because the greatest person who has the most influence is you. You talking to your neighbor, you talking to your family and saying, I heard Barb Kirkmeyer, I heard Eric, I heard Steve. They're going to do a great job for us. We need to support them. We need to kick Nancy Pelosi out. We need to turn our country around, because I think we can all agree on one thing. Joe Biden has done a dismal job, and he's the worst president ever.
There you go. Okay, lightning round. We have about 10 seconds.
I don't know if I can top that. I think Barb and Eric pretty much got it all. I'll just say this right here. A lot of time and effort is going to go into following up on ballots. We have to make sure people get out and vote. So everybody here, please help us with that job. It doesn't matter if it's your neighbor, someone you've never talked politics with. Those would probably even be good, because they're probably swing voters. Please get out there and ask them, have you voted yet? When are you turning it in? Please let me know. It is that important. If they're Democrats, don't remind them. And that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephen. Let's give them a round of applause. And now we have a special guest that is zooming in to talk with us. She is already fighting the good fight, and this will be the cavalry that will come and help her. Please let's welcome Congresswoman Lauren Bobert.
Hello. So great to be with you. Sorry it's virtually.
Congressman, we're so grateful that you joined us. We want to, first of all, ask, how is it going for you on the campaign trail?
Oh, it's going great. I've been all throughout my district, meeting with constituents, with new voters, and the momentum is so tangible. So I want to encourage everybody to get out and continue this message. We have the policies that are going to fix our country. The Democrats know that, and that's why the Democrats are even trying to run on a Republican platform, on a conservative platform, because they know that's what the voters want to hear. These are the solutions that they are wanting to turn everything around. And so we have Democrats who are lying about their voting record history and trying to say that they are conservative or moderate and run on a Republican policy platform. So we have to be strong in our message and let people know that it is Republicans who are going to deliver on these conservative policies.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Absolutely. So we don't want to take much time for tabloid news, because that's not what we do here at 710 KNUS, but your opponent was just revealed, at least someone came out and has alleged that they were blackmailing him for a certain personal act, and that he changed a vote on a multi-million-dollar project. Is that catching up with him in this race, and what are you hearing as you're out there talking to voters?
Yes, so this is catching up with him because people despise corruption. That's what was the problem with my opponent in the primary, the corruption that ensued him at the state legislature. And now we're seeing, as an Aspen City Councilman, Adam Frisch had an affair, and to keep that secret, he sold his vote as a city councilman in order to keep that secret hidden. This is corruption. If he could be shaken down by an Aspen cabbie, a cab medallion holder, imagine what Nancy Pelosi and the DC lobbyists would do with him in Washington, DC. I'm sure China would love to have someone like him in office. who is for sale and can be bought, but this should concern every single voter. It should concern every journalist and every reporter. But they typically like to ask him, Mr. Wonderful, how wonderful is it to be wonderful? And he says, well, it's actually quite wonderful. And but we know the truth. We're getting that message out there because I want people to know that integrity matters. And Adam Frisch does not have any integrity. And not only that, but his voting record, it shows that he is not a moderate. He is not a conservative. He's voted for a carbon tax. He's increased electricity rates in Aspen, increased Aspen city budget by more than $40 million while he was on the Aspen City Council. Now, in Washington, D.C., the millions quickly turn to billions, and the billions turn to trillions, and God forbid, if Democrats find out what comes after $1 trillion. So these are just some of the things that he has done. He also increased fees by 1,200%. And I believe everyone in your audience and everyone viewing knows that a fee is simply a tax that the people do not get to vote on. So we do not need this. These are not conservative policies. They are not moderate by any means. With Aspen having 7,000 full-time residents and Pueblo, which is in Colorado's 3rd district, having nearly 170,000 residents, Aspen city budget is more than double Pueblo's budget. It's absolutely ridiculous. There's no fiscal responsibility. And I think the voters here in Colorado's 3rd district are wise enough to not send him to Washington, D.C.
It's great to hear. Absolutely. The last thing we need is an Aspen spender in Congress when people are already making hundreds of millions of dollars instead of the income they're supposed to earn. Well, you've had to deal with Nancy Pelosi as Speaker of the House for the last 2 years, which I'm sure was not a joyful experience to say the least. When we retake the House of Representatives, what is one of the first things you want to champion when we finally get that gavel back and get the ability to have hearings?
So the hearings are going to be so important when we have the majority. We don't know what the Senate will look like. Hopefully Colorado can help us take back the Senate, but we certainly won't have the White House. And I don't think that Joe Biden and his handlers are exactly eager to sign Republican legislation into law. So our hearings are going to be the most important thing that we could have. And I've been talking with Congressman Jim Jordan, and he wants to have Secretary Mayorkas into the Judiciary Committee and bring up articles of impeachment. This is a disaster what's happening at our southern border, and I'm sure you've talked a lot about that tonight. It is complete invasion, and the fentanyl that is pouring into our country because of these wide open border policies is killing Americans. This has to stop. Secretary Mayorkas has to be held accountable, but we also need to be bringing in the Secretary of Energy and Deb Haaland, the Secretary of the Interior, to talk about our energy crisis that we are having, to regain energy independence instead of outsourcing our energy to our adversaries. We could literally be exporting freedom right now, and and Russia wouldn't have anything on Ukraine because we could be exporting our clean LNG. But we also need to get in charge of our forests. In Colorado's 3rd district, that is a big deal. We have 6 billion standing dead trees in the western United States, and they are all waiting to, they're a tinderbox waiting to ignite. And this is something that we have to be able to get a hold of and be able to manage our forests properly. We all want to be good stewards of our land. We all want cleaner air and cleaner water, and that starts with managing our forests. So that's something that I'm definitely going to focus on for Colorado's 3rd district, as I have been. And then, of course, lowering inflation. The reckless spending from Washington, D.C., the energy crisis, this couples for the skyrocketing inflation that we are seeing. 1 month of every American salary has been stolen from them by this inflation this year. 8.3% is 1 month of your annual salary. And Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi stole that with their reckless spending in Washington, D.C.
Thank you. That is so true. Well, I'm not a litigious person, but I have to say, when we finally start having these hearings and holding people accountable, I may start watching TV once again, just because it's going to be great viewing. Well, we have 1 minute left, Congresswoman. Thank you so much for joining us. What do you want to say to the great listeners here and the viewers around this state as we head into the final 21 days?
I want to tell everybody, keep going. The momentum is on our side. The winds are in our favor. The American people know that our policies are the policies that are going to get America back on track to be able to lower the price of groceries. I went to the grocery store tonight and bought cat food and dish soap and rice and spent $100. I mean, there was a couple other things in there, but I'm like, goodness, what did we get here? So to lower these prices, to lower inflation, to get a check on overreaching government and out of control spending in Washington, D.C. I serve on the budget committee. Nancy Pelosi won't even allow the Democrats to put forward a budget. And the 2 budget reconciliations that we had bypass the budget committee, which we have jurisdiction over. So we really do need to get the adults back in the room and in charge, because Nancy Pelosi will not allow us to have agenda, put forward an agenda, and save this country. I have a 100% conservative voting record. I don't have to pretend to be a conservative. I am a conservative, and my constituents here in Colorado's 3rd District know that. And just keep telling all of your friends to vote. Ballots are out. So make sure people vote. We won't have a red wave if we don't show up. And most of all, I just want to leave with this one thing, other than I hope my color on your screen looks like what I'm seeing on mine and not the side screen, dear Lord. But I just want to leave you with this one thing. And I believe this with all of my heart. Every single person deserves a government that does not have Nancy Pelosi as Speaker. So let's fire her.
That is a great call to action. Thank you so much, Congresswoman. We so appreciate your taking the time. Thank you. God bless you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Polis's policies fail voters. Colorado's high crime rate affects everyone. Non-prosecution of violent crime and low bail gets thugs back out on our streets. Young voters are getting crushed by Jared Polis's bad policies. Many are even finding it hard to put gas in their car. Can we really trust Polis?
And everybody's going to hate us when we cause a recession.
Help Colorado find its way again. Fire Polis. Vote Heidi Ganahl. It just gets better and better. Listen, if you were looking for a reason, another reason, to distinguish between our candidates and theirs, I want you to just take note of a couple people here to my left. On the far, far left, not ideologically, just, geography, is Lang Sias. Lang isn't just our Republican nominee for treasurer. This is like the literal Top Gun naval aviator guy. This is Maverick, although that's not. What was your call sign?
It was not Maverick.
What was it? Tell us what it is.
It was actually hog, because I can consume a lot of food.
Now listen, that's to contrast with the Democrat nominee for treasurer, who's the incumbent. And if you can name the incumbent treasurer, you are probably the incumbent treasurer, because nobody knows who this guy is. I don't know what he's accomplished, but we know we have Top Gun Hog here on our left. Next to him, our Republican nominee for Attorney General, John's great claim to fame, absolutely. Great claim to fame is I hired him. No, I'm kidding. That's not it at all. No.
That is true, though. You did hire me.
John is still a lieutenant colonel in the United States Marine Corps. By the way, I was happy to be part of that promotion ceremony. That was awesome. Amen to that. Guy's deployed to Afghanistan. But he's also, if you're going to contrast him, you have someone that has spent his life having stuck his hand up in the air and said, I will go wherever my country tells me to go in defense of it, with a guy who brags about having been in the Obama administration for 15 minutes. That's the choice for Attorney General. You have a courtroom champion, and then you have the former dean of the CU Law School. So let me start right there. John, when you look at this and you're trying to motivate people to focus on this race, because folks, I'll tell you historically what happens. People will vote those top few ballots, the top few spaces, and then they drop off. And they stop paying attention down south to treasurer and to attorney general. John, what's at stake?
The question everybody has to ask themselves is, do you all feel safer today than you did 4 years ago before our incumbent, Phil Weiser, was elected as your chief law enforcement official for the state of Colorado? Anybody feel safer? Anybody think our state is on the right track? Well, that's exactly why you all need to vote down ballot and look at these very important races. I mean, I know you're saving the best for the last year, the lawyer and the accountant, the treasurer, excuse me. In all seriousness, though, that's kind of what's at stake here. You know, when George talks about hiring me, that was years ago, 2013, when you were first elected as district attorney. I started this cold case unit for him. But I've done a lot of other things, too, like running our grand jury. And what I do now as the elected district attorney is I use that grand jury to go after the fentanyl traffickers who are poisoning kids in our community, literally taking lives from people that we care so much about. And I've taken hundreds of thousands of fentanyl pills off the streets, dozens of firearms from these Mexican drug cartel-related groups, indicted dozens of them as well. And what has your current Attorney General done with the statewide grand jury, the most powerful investigative tool in the entire state? He's been going after bike thieves in Boulder. So I think we can do a lot better. You guys agree with me there?
Amen. Hog, look, when folks are talking, these folks are sold. They're going to vote their entire ballot. But when they're talking to their neighbors, their friends in their social media circles, and they're saying, you've got to vote for Lang Sias for treasurer, and those people come back and say, I'd love to, why does it matter? What's the answer?
Well, you know, I'll answer that by asking the same question that John asked in a slightly different way. Are you better off financially today than you were 4 years ago? How's the price of gasoline? How's the price of food? How's the price of housing? And get ready for that electrical bill that's coming soon. Colorado actually leads the nation in the cost of inflation. Every single Colorado family is paying over $950 more every single month than they were a year and a half ago, just to try and maintain their standard of living. And folks, that has all happened. 100% of that has happened with one party in charge of this state. One party in charge of Washington as well. Well, I'm going to go there and work to change that. I will be a champion for our taxpayers, because our taxpayers need somebody to stand up for them, because the people representing us in Denver are not doing that. The guy that I am running against, who I served with in the legislature, he has managed in the last 4 years to increase 3 budget cycles, to increase the head count, the size of the Treasury Department by almost 50% in 3 years. How many of you out there with small businesses were able to up your head count by 50% during COVID, spending other people's money to do it? He has rubber stamped every single one of the taxing and fees and spending and regulatory costs that have bumped up costs on people. He has rubber stamped every single one of those, including he was a cheerleader for the new Green New Deal legislation. Remember, it was called Build Back Better, that even a bunch of Democrat economists said, oh, no, that's going to drive up inflation even higher than it has. If he'd had his way, we would have that as well. And as the treasurer, as our treasurer, he advocated for something called Proposition CC back in 2019, and that was going to end our Tabor tax refunds, not just then, but forever. And now he's running campaign ads wanting people to vote for him because he's given them $750 that, first of all, you all know you were going to get anyway, and second of all, he tried to prevent from ever happening. I mean, you just can't make up that level of hypocrisy. And we're going to have a change in the Treasurer's office. We're going to have a change in the Treasurer's office on the 9th of November, and I will fight to make this state a more affordable place for our families, for our small businesses, and particularly the people at the lower end of the spectrum who are really getting beaten up by inflation and our cost of living.
Right on. John, there's a ton of people here. The biggest part of the audience is online. They may look at this recording. Some of those folks, even though they're loyal 710 listeners, they may not be straight party, Republican Party ticket voters. When you look at the prospect of perhaps having some kind of divided government, what difference can a Republican Attorney General make?
I think it's important that we bring some balance back to the state. There's no question that one-party rule, as Lang has just so eloquently talked about, is taking us in the wrong direction, obviously too far and too fast. Having a Republican Attorney General means that you have somebody who can stand up and be the person who speaks up for you. Especially, let's say, as the legislature is doing something like voting to decriminalize the possession of fentanyl. Let's say make it a misdemeanor to possess enough fentanyl to kill, 2,000 people, right? Like they did back in 2019. You want to have a Republican Attorney General who's going to stand up and say, don't do that. Obviously, it's bad, and it's going to contribute to increasing death in our communities. Our current Attorney General actually backed a bill that made it a misdemeanor to steal cars that used to be a felony offense, George, at a time when we're number one in the country for car theft. Now, as your Republican Attorney General, I can guarantee you I will be under the Gold Dome fighting for you and the people in our communities who are being victimized by these soft on crime policies and laws that are passed by the legislature and signed into law by the governor.
Amen to that, buddy, right there. Listen, Phil, just real quickly, Phil has been running on a platform of hope, but it's hope that you don't remember what I did during my 4 years in the office, including, and maybe this is a Second Amendment thing, this guy has rearmed convicted drug dealers and car thieves as part of a plan, I think, to make us safer. Lang, you showed me something on your phone, really disturbing. No, I'm kidding. It was very, very hopeful, and it was something that I'd love to leave these folks with if you share it with them. If you're looking for a reason to leave this room feeling that you've got the wind at your back, what is that thing?
Well, this was actually an article in, of all places, the New York Times, and it was reporting on a poll that actually came out yesterday, I believe, and about the dramatic shift that has taken place just in the last few weeks in public opinion. And I don't remember all of the numbers, but I think I remember one important one very well, and that was that the opinion of unaffiliated women voters had actually changed from being a plus 14 for Democrats to a plus 18 for Republicans.
Right on.
Nationwide.
That is huge. That
is huge. And what's driving it? What is driving it is the economy. It's inflation, and it's the cost of living, and it's also crime. We have a very, very real chance here to take back this state and restore some balance. And I will tell you one quick plug for all up and down the ballot why you want to vote for your Republicans. When I served in the legislature, the Democrats actually controlled the House where I was, but the Republicans controlled the Senate by exactly one vote. And here's the difference that made. It meant that the president of the Senate was a Republican, the Speaker of the House was a Democrat. Each one of them had the ability to send bills that they really didn't like to a cold, dark place to die. What that did, though, was it provided balance and it forced compromise. And that is something that we do not have right now. There is no compromise and there is no conversation. So please vote for all those Republican candidates up and down the ballot, and we'll bring back some balance to this state.
Amen to that. Amen to that. They're not Army, either of them, but they're okay. And I want to say, vote the entire ballot. My thanks to John Kellner for Attorney General, Lang Sias for Treasurer. Give it up for him.
Thank you all very much.
There's, if you're a 710 listener, you know a couple huge and Hugh names out there. One of them, Hugh Hewitt, is here with us in person. Another one is with us, but up on one of the screens. How many people here have heard of the name Dennis Prager? Dennis. Well, we're going to go to a commercial, and then there's going to be a guy named Dennis Prager, who we've all heard of. Thank you.
Colorado is an amazingly diverse state, and it offers unlimited resources to its residents. Many middle-class families can't afford their home, gas, and groceries. Polis and his Democratic Party have created excessive fees, taxes, and regulations that threaten to put the American dream out of reach for many Coloradans. Let's get our freedoms back and enjoy our state again. Let's get them back this November. Let's vote Republican.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Our next guest has been my friend for 33 years. Dennis Prager, star of Stage and Screen. Please welcome Dennis.
Do you know, it's very eerie. When I saw you on stage for a moment, I thought, oh, is that a video of me?
Yeah, I know, that's a terrible thing. I've known him for 33 years and we both had white hair. Now here's the deal. Dennis is late, per usual, and he has 10 minutes, which is like what he takes to clear his throat. So I'm just gonna give an introduction and then let him riff, because that's what he does anyway. My introduction is this. For 33 years that I've known him, I've always said, as the government gets bigger, the citizens get smaller. I've always said that, haven't I, Dennis?
Oh, God.
Yeah. So, Dennis, have our citizens gotten so small that they cannot regrow a republic?
All right, great to be with you all. I actually wish I were there in person, but I am on this Battleground State Tour tonight. I'm coming to you from Atlanta. We had a wonderful turnout in Atlanta last night, Orlando, tomorrow night, Philadelphia, the next night, Pittsburgh. So it gives you an idea of the schedule that some of Hugh's colleagues and I are following this week. Why am I doing this? Because I love this country and I love the experiment in liberty that America is about. No country has embraced liberty like the United States. When the French made the Statue of Liberty, they didn't keep it for themselves. They didn't give it to Britain or Norway or Denmark. They gave it to the United States. Do you know what has happened and what I'm about to tell you? If you actually shed a tear, it would be an appropriate response. For the first time in my life, I am saying something that it never dawned on me that I would ever say. The United States is the exporter of bad ideas. You know that this has never been the case since 1776? Our ideas have been the greatest ideas the world has had. The American value system, especially, of course, foremost, liberty. When in Hong Kong, they protested the Chinese communist takeover just a couple of years ago, what flag did they choose to show? They didn't show any flag in the world except the United States flag. And now, believe it or not, a left-wing president of France is complaining about woke ideas come from where? The United States of America? We are sending the idea to the world that children are not born boy or girl, male or female, that is an assigned sex. Assigned? Yes, it's assigned by biology. If you're a believer, it's assigned by God. If you're not a believer or you are a believer, it's assigned by science, but it's not assigned by the doctor or the parents. We are sending the idea around the world that children should be told that sexual identity, or as they call it, gender identity, is non-binary. In other words, the human species is not divided into male and female. Every other animal species is, but we're not. That is one of the infinite number of examples. Teachers are not calling students, all over the country, teachers are not calling students boys and girls anymore. What does this have to do with the election? All of this is the function of the left. And the left has a party. The name of the left-wing party in the United States of America is the Democratic Party. You have great candidates. I was just watching and listening to them. They're terrific. But I gotta be honest with you. Even if a Republican isn't terrific, he or she is infinitely better than a Democrat. That is what we have come to, because the Democratic Party represents the worst in America today. It represents the opposite of the country. Those of you who hear me on KNUS, you know how often I say everything that left touches, it destroys, because it's true. They're doing it to the universities, or they already have done it, to the high schools, to the elementary schools. They did it to music, they did it to art, they're doing it to Christianity and Judaism. I was just reading an article in the Wall Street Journal about what is happening in the armed forces. The Army is 25% below capacity. It is not, nobody is enlisting, relatively nobody. And that's with lowered standards, I might add. Half of the, well, not half, about, 75% of young people don't think this country is worth fighting for. And the percentage of those who do believe the country is wonderful, the conservatives who often did make up the bulwark of the armed forces, they see what's happening to the armed forces and they're saying, why should I enlist? I mean, and it's a tough answer to afford them. They're becoming so woke, the armed forces, that it's hard to know what they stand for anymore. They're given, according to the chief of staff of all the armed forces, they're supposed to be given books on white fragility and white supremacy in the armed forces. They're supposed to accept men who say that they are women into women's barracks. There's no area of life where the Democratic Party has not become the voice of irrationality and of awful values, undoing, as I said, the American Revolution. You know, they say Chesterton, because many of you know that I believe fundamentally that it emanates from a religious battle. G.K. Chesterton is quoted as saying, we don't know for a fact if he said it, but I didn't say it, and I want to give somebody credit. When people stop believing in God, they don't believe in nothing. They believe in anything. It's a brilliant quote. And the proof is, religious people don't say that men menstruate. Religious people don't say men give birth. Secular people do. Not all secular. There are secular conservatives, God bless them, if they'll take God's blessings. But this is truly a battle between the Judeo-Christian world and the secular world, the secular radical world. People never become irreligious. They may become atheists, but they never become irreligious. When they stop believing in Judaism or Christianity or Catholicism, Protestantism, Mormonism, whatever it might be, what they will start believing in is environmentalism or humanism or feminism or socialism or Marxism, you name the ism. People don't stop being religious when they leave Judeo-Christian values. They just make up new ones, secular religions. This is the battle. This is a colossal battle. This is the greatest battle in the West since the American Revolution. That's why it's so important. The issue is not, do I love the Republican Party? I don't love any party. I love values. And the Republican Party is a hell of a lot closer to the values that I love than the Democratic Party is. And that's all you should need to know.
Dennis, I have to get one more question in. I get 2 questions per 10 minutes, all right? That's all I wanted.
I didn't do that. I thought you gave me 10 minutes on one question.
No. I get a second question. It's like a
Right.
record for me. 2 questions out of Dennis in 10 minutes. And take an extra. The only good news of the last 10 years is the birth and rapid spread of Prager University. It's actually changed our culture. So, do you agree with me? So I have a request. In the closing kick of this election, in the last 20 days, will you make a Prager University 5-minute speech on why this election matters and people have to vote? Because it will go everywhere if you do it.
In a certain sense, everything that we have put out makes clear what the battle for America and the West is. But we can't overtly, as a 501c3, endorse a party. So we know that they would love to shut us down if they could, and we're very careful not to cross that border. But we know, and everyone knows, that in the final analysis, if people take the values that we espouse seriously, they'll want to protect this country against those who want to undo the American Revolution.
You can encourage people to vote, though. That's certainly nonpartisan. If Dennis Prager says, go out and vote, we know who's going to watch that video. It'll go viral. 10 million people will watch it. The country's future hangs on you, Dennis.
Even I don't believe that.
Dennis Prager, thank you for... I've done Detroit and Denver. You've gone to Atlanta, and you get to go to Philly, which I know you love. That's your favorite city in America. I will see you in Pittsburgh, my friend. Thank you very much.
Looking forward. Bye, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Colorado is an amazingly diverse state, and it offers unlimited resources to its residents. Many middle-class families can't afford their home, gas, and groceries. Polis and his Democratic Party have created excessive fees, taxes, and regulations that threaten to put the American dream out of reach for many Coloradans. Let's get our freedoms back and enjoy our state again. Let's get them back this November. Let's vote Republican.
Thank you again for being here with us tonight. I see the Heidi signs in the back. Don't California my Colorado. Please, it is a pleasure to be with you tonight. I just want to say a big shout out to the folks behind the scenes. This is not easy to put together, especially for those of you watching online. So thank you to our crew, our camera people, and the behind the scenes. Thank you to them, our Chief of Staff, Mark Crowley, always involved. I'm Steffan Tubbs. I do the afternoon show and evening 4 to 7. It's a pleasure to have you here with us, and also the next governor of the state of Colorado, Heidi Ganahl. Mom and Dad are here. That's awesome. Mom and Dad, stand up real quick. Stand up again. Well, there we go. Mom and Dad. The Colorado GOP chair is Christy Burton Brown. I have criticized the Colorado GOP for many, many years, but I was allowed to when I came over to 710 KNUS, and fine job. The messaging is there. It seems like you are all on the same page and lockstep. By the way, congratulations to you, Heidi, for absolutely, can I say kicking ass? Heidi Ganahl, in debate number 1 especially, kicked the governor's behind. Absolutely. We had talked, you had the debate, and then you were on the program, and you had had a long day, but you came in studio, and that meant a lot to all of us and to our listeners as well. Have you seen, because we talked behind the scenes about it, have you seen a different Jared Polis at least attempt to make excuses in debates 2 and 3?
I mean, he tried, but how do you defend that record? It's terrible, and I keep saying he wants a second term to fix the problems that he created. It's ridiculous, and people are seeing through it. So, yes, he throws out some numbers and tries to pretend like everything's just fine. But we all know it's not fine when you pay for your gas and your groceries and your heating bills, and you hear your neighbors have their cars stolen. So that's how we're going to win. Those are the things that are going to convince voters that they want a different choice.
3 weeks, 3 short weeks after a long, long campaign. Every time you're on with me, you talk about your different groups, and you've got your veterans, and you've got your Latinas, and you've got your, just everybody. It just seems like you've got groups everywhere. The work isn't done, though. What do you do in the next 3 weeks?
You know, guys, this is hand-to-hand combat. I get the question a lot, like, why aren't we seeing more ads on TV? And we've got some great ads running, but we have about $1 million to spend on TV ads. He's already spent $11 million in the last few weeks on TV ads. They're going to keep raining down. Don't worry about it. We've got the best special forces ever on the ground doing hand-to-hand combat for us. As you mentioned, we have all these different coalitions. Shout out to the GGs. And making sure that we are touching every voter we possibly can. And I truly believe it's a special moment right now for our party. You've heard the other candidates say that, but we have an incredible slate. Christy and the team are helping so much. Everybody is working together really, really well right now. And Steffan, if I can just take a second and tell everybody why we're doing this. So Dylan Vakoff died a few weeks ago, a young law enforcement officer, 27 years old. I've gotten to know his mom and some of his family members. They came to the debate the other night. What an amazing young man. He served in the military. He served with his heart as an officer. She lost her other son to drugs and an opioid problem. And Lisa's one of the best people. And then we're fighting for the Castillos, John and Maria, who lost Kendrick, who's a hero. And we're fighting for Mickey, who lost Hannah, her daughter, to fentanyl poisoning. And the list goes on and on. That's why we're doing this. We need to tell those stories and lift these young people up and lift these parents up who really understand what it is that we're fighting for.
Amen. Christy, let me ask you, with 3 weeks to go, from your position, are you confident right now?
Absolutely. I think we have one of the best unified slates of Republicans running up and down the ballot that we have ever seen in Colorado. I'm one of those nerdy teenagers who watched every possible political debate I could ever get my hands on. And when Heidi debated in Pueblo, that is probably the best debate I've ever seen in my life. She took it to Jared Polis. And I am so proud to have someone like Heidi who stands up for the people, not someone like Jared Polis who lives on Fantasy Island and pretends he has a record that doesn't even exist. So I agree with Heidi. It is about getting out there to the voters. We have people walking every day. I've been walking on Saturdays with our candidates in key legislative districts, and the conversations we're having with voters at the door, inflation and cost of living still being the #1 issue for the undecided voters out there who still remain. And then so many people concerned about crime, concerned about parents and kids and education. So with our unified message, our commitment to Colorado, candidates like Heidi and everyone else you've seen up here tonight, we have the message, we have the boots on the ground to take it to the Democrats and stop the insane one-party control that's devastating our state.
It is insanity, absolutely. Heidi4governor.com, by the way. Mom and Dad know that website, most certainly. Let's see, September 17th, 2020, we released a small little film that terrorized the political system within Denver city government, and it's called Denver in Decay. Hopefully a couple of you have watched that. We are approaching 800,000 views. My fear is Colorado is going to get to a point, and sure, you're going to find pockets all the time. They're going to say problems. What problems? But I'm telling you, we saw from that film, you're now seeing stolen vehicles and fentanyl. This is not just in downtown Denver or in the city limits. It's creeping to Douglas County. It's going up to Weld County. It's going west. It's going east. We've got to stop this now. And it's now or never to me. If they've got another 4 years, I don't know what this state will look like.
Well, and I hate to tell you this, Steffan, but I've been traveling the state, all 64 counties, almost twice now. And actually before that, as a regent statewide, it's everywhere.
Yep.
It is everywhere. It's not just in Denver. There are homelessness issues in Durango and Grand Junction, La Junta. Crime is rampant all over the state. People can't afford housing anywhere in Colorado right now. The beautiful small towns of our state are very popular now for out-of-staters to come and move and change the culture, and it's just heartbreaking what is happening. And so I want you to know that we are all in the same boat, as Danny, my lieutenant governor, likes to say, which he's amazing. He's such an incredible partner in this. We are all in the same boat, whether you're rich or poor, black or white, Hispanic, girl, boy, whatever. We are all affected by crime, by homelessness, by inflation. 16% since Biden took office, the highest inflation in the country. That means you're paying an additional $11,700 a year to work, live, and raise a family here. We are all in the same boat, and we've got to start rowing in the right direction.
By the way, thank you for telling a certain channel with the number between 10 and 8 to basically, well, no, we're not going to do it. So thank you for that. Christy, I want to ask you, we got a couple of minutes left. The message could be perceived by an independent or a Democrat. Gosh, y'all conservatives are sure negative. All you do is point out. What about you? Isn't it now time? Can you imagine if not every Republican candidate is successful, but even the majority? What are we in for? And I know that in the next 3 weeks, you're working hard.
Yeah, and I think you really hit on something, Steffan. What unaffiliated and those swing voters really want to see from Republicans, they want to see people who they can trust, people who are problem solvers. And I think that's the key that so many of our candidates are leaning into, whether we're talking about local candidates like our sheriffs, whether we're talking about legislative races, or all the way up to the state race like Heidi and everyone else here. We see people with actual solutions for the future. We see people who can build a better Colorado that we all want. We see people that want to restore Colorado to the free state that we used to have before Democrats took one-party control. So yes, we expose what they do. Heidi does an excellent job in all the debates talking about Jared Polis's real record, but it has to be about those solutions to the problems. That's what our Commitment to Colorado offers. Anyone who hasn't seen it can read it at commitmenttocolorado.com. And our candidates have it all over their website, what they would do if elected, not just complain, but solve problems.
It's funny, too, the Commitment to Colorado, all of a sudden, it's kind of like now it's chic to fund the police. They certainly didn't feel that way a couple of years ago, and the Commitment to Colorado on the Democrat side is eerily similar to
imitation.
We have to wrap up, but what is the one thing that you can promise, whether there's a conservative listening to you, an independent, somebody who's never voted before, or a Democrat, when you are elected, you will do what is your elevator speech?
I will undo as much as I possibly can, and I will trust the people of Colorado to make good decisions for their lives, their businesses, their families, their kids, their health. The only thing I will ever mandate is freedom. I promise you that.
Ladies and gentlemen, the next governor of Colorado, Heidi Ganahl, her parents, Christy Burton Brown. And if you're online, get up and cheer, because it is time to take this state back and rescue Colorado. Thank you. Great job.
Polis's policies fail voters. Colorado's high crime rate affects everyone. Non-prosecution of violent crime and low bail gets thugs back out on our streets. Young voters are getting crushed by Jared Polis's bad policies. Many are even finding it hard to put gas in their car. Can we really trust Polis?
And everybody's going to hate us when we cause a recession.
Help Colorado find its way again. Fire Polis. Vote Heidi Ganahl.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we get to wind up. Senator Cruz could not make it tonight. He had a unfortunate coincidence arise and could not join us, so he won't be joining us. That just gives us more time to tell you what's going to happen. And since I think local hosts in local markets know more about politics than anyone from a national level, I'm going to ask you both for over and unders on the House, over and unders on the Senate, and the margin of victory for Joe and for Heidi. So let's start with, I say the over-under is 25 in the House. What do you think, Deborah?
I would agree with you, Hugh. No, I think we're going to do much better here than most people imagine. I'll just give you one anecdote. You heard about the independent women switching from 14 plus for Democrats to 18 plus for Republicans. I personally spoke to a group of women in Cherry Creek, half of whom were Democrats 9 months before, and half of them just started crying about what was going on. One woman stood up and said, I used to be an attorney for the ACLU, but I don't know what is happening with our kids. That's what we're seeing. The revolution that started in school boards is going to sweep across the state, and that is where the activity is. And that's why I do agree with you about the House, and I think we'll do very well in the Senate, too. I think we'll take the U.S. Senate back.
George?
My sense is it'll be less, but there's a good reason for it, all right? I think we get about 20. That's plenty. Here's why. One, you know that the gerrymandering that has taken place across the country has worked some real damage to some otherwise competitive races for Republicans. But here's the good part. We outperformed 2 years ago the way most parties perform in terms of House elections. We gained ground against the House so much that margin is so much more narrow than it is historically, that these 20 seats, if you add that to what we gained last time, that is about that historic midterm sort of range that you see there. So I have no doubt that we'll take back the House. The Senate, if we take it, it'll be by 1. I'm optimistic. And in terms of Joe O'Dea winning, let's be honest, folks. We don't care if it's a vote, a percent, we're going to win. This is not a state where Republicans are going to run away with anything. But we are going to win, and he's going to win by 2. Boom. Count it.
I will say 22.
What? You just picked a number between
He did. That was pretty wild. Okay.
It was very much like
Would you like to go through it? Oh, there's only 8 minutes left.
Do I need to separate you two?
No. I'm going to go 22, Senate 1, and I think Joe O'Dea and Heidi Ganahl can win. It's going to be close. It's going to be very close. But I think if you look not only here in Colorado, you look around the country, you ask yourself that old question, are you better off today than you were 4 years ago. I think across the country, people are realizing, wait a minute, I won't admit that I voted for them, but I really don't like what they've done for me. I don't like what I have been paying at the pump. I know it's not Putin's fault. I know I'm paying more at Costco and Sam's Club and King Soopers and Safeway. I don't like that they're trying to rescue things by pumping billions and trillions of dollars into an economy that we know is maybe not 2008 level yet. But I think that somehow, some way, cooler heads prevail, smarter, or maybe just, do you like the way it's gone the last 4 years? And I'm optimistic.
Now, I want to close on the issue that they say we never talk about. I want to talk about abortion. Every single day, I know that listening from his Philadelphia retirement is a familiar name to many of you who are Catholics, Archbishop Chaput. And every single day, he sends me a note on what he doesn't like or does like. I was told tonight that one of our local colleagues on a different station isn't 100% with Joe O'Dea because Joe is, that he says his Roman Catholic faith prevents that. That is nonsense. I don't know if any of you are Catholic. That is absolutely nonsense. And I would turn to your old Archbishop to tell you, we have got to keep the bad justices off the Supreme Court the way that Mitch did.
Oh, yeah.
We need to be able to have 51 senators. So if you've got a problem with Joe on anything, put it aside because it will come down to having an extra vote in the Senate, and it is the Catholic thing to do to get a Republican majority because they are going to put people in charge of the judicial selection process that protects the rights of the state to decide. Comments on that issue?
I think this is an issue that we should never be afraid to talk about because we can win on it every single day of the week. And here is why. I talk to pro-choice people even, I'm pro-life. But the reality is right here in Colorado, we have the most radical abortion law ever passed, second only to California, up until the moment of birth for any reason at any time. That is against the vast majority of Americans and Coloradans. 75% are not for that. Instead of shying away from it, we need to do basically political jujitsu, take their weight as they throw that at us and push back, because it is a winning issue. That is the extreme position. And when it comes to the Senate race, here's what I always say to people. It is Michael Bennet that tried to make that the law of the entire land in 2019 when he introduced a bill that would have made abortion up until or after the moment of birth, in many cases, the law of the land. We are the common sense people. I personally served on a board that helped women that were in crisis pregnancies have actual real choices. We can talk about what is compassionate is not this radical agenda, and always remind people who are the extremists. That is the only thing that Democrats can try to throw at people, and they lose if we're courageous enough to talk about that they are the radical extremists. I think we need to talk about it.
George?
I think that there's a time and a place for us to argue for purity and to continue to talk about the fact that principle has to trump some things, no pun intended. But I will say that, you know, we're a party in this state, and I grew up here. Like, outside of where I was born, the only place I've lived longer than Colorado is Tikrit, Iraq. Okay, so this is everything in my life that's important is here, so I'm committed. And we have seen our state change such that it has been a long, long time since we have feasted at the table of victory. And we are crawling on our hands and knees across the desert towards something. Maybe it's a mirage, I don't think it is. And when we get there, and when we have this great bowl of something, we'll call it Joe O'Dea, we look in there and say, there's a fly in our soup. I guess we're just not gonna eat it. We're not in that position, folks. We need and want to win. Whatever gripes you have, you send your letters to Senator Joe O'Dea and tell him how unhappy you are with him, but send them to Senator Joe O'Dea. That's how you know we've made progress in the state of Colorado. That's how we take back this state and this country.
Steffan?
If I may, real quick, I just want to say publicly, I am so proud of you, Deborah, because you ran one hell of a campaign for Senate. And not everyone, and I think it just needs to be said, not everyone would show the grace that Deborah has to the likes of Joe O'Dea. She knows what's best for this state. Someday, perhaps. But she did not know I was going to say that. Mom and Dad didn't know I was going to say that, but it's absolutely true. And you and your husband, your family, big things, and just thank you for being you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Steffan.
And I'll be quick. Joe O'Dea must win. I'm with Joe here. I'm with George here, and you send him send him a selfie video. Send him something. Joe O'Dea must win in the state of Colorado. Get rid of Michael Bennet. It is time for new leadership, and we cannot afford to screw this up right now.
Amen.
And so, to that point, engage respectfully our friends who find fault with any of our candidates on any issue. And use Leader McConnell's rule. First thing you got to do, you got to win. If you haven't got a majority in the Senate, you can't do a thing. If you haven't got a majority in the House, you can't do a thing. First thing we've got to do is win. And with our last 3 minutes, I want to go backwards order. What do you think is the most important thing that people online watching, people in the audience with us, can do in these last 20 days? Let's start with you.
Well, everybody says go talk to your neighbors. I mean, I just want to be real. I like my neighbors. I don't know, I'll get out of my comfort zone. You have to do that. It's too important. I know it's cliche. All three of us here, locally, and Hugh talks nationally, Dennis talks nationally about it. But we all say at certain times on the air, well, this could be your most important election of your lifetime. We really don't know that. But what if it is? I would say whether it's contributions, if you can give $50, $20, if it is contacting one of their campaigns, and in the last 3 weeks of this, going on a Saturday and walking, we've got to do something. I think right now there is something that is there, and wouldn't it be too bad if we had all only done just a little bit more, we could have gotten over the hump. I encourage everyone, I'll put my money where my mouth is, and I hope you will as well.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. George. Two big things. One, keep rooting for those Yankees. That is for you right there. Two, add into your lexicon everything you do between now and 3 weeks from right now. Whenever you meet someone, friend, foe, family, stranger, doesn't matter. How are you? Have you voted yet? How are you? Have you voted yet? Good to see you. Have you voted yet? Lay on the horn in traffic. Have you voted yet? Constantly. Everywhere you go, have you voted yet? Have you voted yet? You do that enough in person. You do that enough through your text, through your social media. That's the difference maker. It's not us in this room. It's everybody else outside this room that we know that we can touch. And with that, have you voted yet?
Very good. I would say a couple of things. Number one, don't forget the other races. We can retake the State Board of Education for the first time probably in about 10 years.
Yeah.
Anyone who cares about what's going on in our schools, we have to do that. Dan Malloy, Peggy Probst, Molly Lamar.
Great.
Look at that. Don't forget our state Senate candidates. We can retake the state Senate and finally have a stopgap against the insane policies that are going through. And definitely, I'll echo what Steffan said. This is our time, 21 days to talk to your neighbors, somebody you have not spoken to before. When I ask this question on the air, what keeps you up at night? It lights up. I guarantee you, every single one of your neighbors has something that is robbing them of sleep at night. And this can be the time. 43% unaffiliated voters in Colorado, not just to win in 2022, but they can look back, the leftists that have pushed it too far, and see that this is the year that everything shifted. Colorado shifted. We're not a blue state, we're purple or we're schizophrenic, and then we could get mental health finally, talk to our neighbors, bring them over. This is our time, and if we do not sweep it, it will be because we didn't have those conversations. We can do it, and you all can do it. So we've got to take advantage of these last 21 days. Thank you so much.
And so I'm going to wrap up by telling you about when we failed in the last campaign stop. We do this tour every 2 years. Salem hosts are all over the country trying to gin up enthusiasm at home, people watching, sound bites for the radio show, our great local lineup. We do this because we want to win. We went to Minneapolis and we filled up Symphony Hall, and it was the Norm Coleman, Al Franken race. And If you recall, Norm lost by less than 500 votes. I believe it was about 300 votes. If we had asked everyone in Symphony Hall to just do 10% more of their giving, 10% more of their time, 10% more of their precinct walking, Norm would have been the senator and would still be the senator. And not only in the United States lose a great friend, Israel lost a great friend, and so many votes would have gone differently. So my appeal to you is, don't let this be Minnesota, Al Franken, and Norm Coleman. Put Joe over the top, bring Heidi along with him, and everyone up and down the aisle. Thank you so much for being here tonight. God bless you all. We'll see you on election night, on victory night. Good night.
Nice job.